welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, your RB Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the recent support on our recent content, whether it be our shorts, full-length episodes, or TikToks. The preseason is officially over, so the NBA is pretty much back at this point. We'll be covering tip-off week in its entirety, pretty much a two-part episode as we upload on Mondays and Fridays. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. Before we get in today's content, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for updates.
So, I mean, pretty much the preseason is over, so if you're watching this episode, it'll be on Monday, right? And the regular season will start officially on Tuesday, right? And
Mm-hmm.
obviously it'll be kicked off with the Lakers Nuggets, right? Ring night for the Nuggets and then followed with the Suns and Warriors. Just like I guess kind of like a sort of like just a quick wrap up of some of the, crazy preseason moments from the last few days, right? Obviously, you had the Spurs and the Warriors, right? Kind of capping off basically the end of preseason, right, with Wenbanyama going off. Um, Once again, right, just crazy plays everywhere, right? Basically in the span of 90 seconds, right? You're talking about a guy who had a block on a Clay Thompson three, a dunk, a block on a Wiggins shot, right, and then a three or an and one. I mean, like just it's just kind of wild again, to think about just how far ahead his offense seems from what I would have initially thought. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, when we first talked about him going into the season, right, I think our thought process was, he wasn't going to be bad or raw offensive, but it would have felt like the defense would have come a lot further along than the offense. But his offense has been really good
Yeah.
in the preseason, right? Hasn't shot well every game, but you can clearly see, the skill and the talent there. At that size, and just the ability to take guys off the dribble,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Pulling off the dribble, right? Getting to the free throw line, getting finishing around the rim. Just using the size, right? The 3-point shot again hasn't been great, and again that was kind of something that we thought about, right? In regards to, hey, he didn't shoot that great from three overseas, right? So that probably come later, but the mechanics are good, right? So I think again, as I've continued to say, as long as he's healthy, right? I mean, this guy's on a superstar trajectory, right? He's 19, so obviously we got to wait, for a while, right? Clearly, he's not even close to his peak yet. But so far, I think this is a really successful preseason for Wenbanyama, and I'm really intrigued to see where the Spurs continue to go from here.
Yeah, huge start, and I'm wondering, is this the best preseason we've seen in a long time? Because I think it is, especially from him. And that's what we're talking about, obviously. But, from Wemby, I think I have not been disappointed. I think he's exceeded expectations in terms of what he's done in the preseason. And like you said, I think he's just getting started. That's the crazy thing. Um, and I think
Right.
everything will go his way as long as he doesn't get injured, God forbid, and knock on wood. But as long as he can stay healthy, I think he can definitely be a top guy for the majority of his career, if not all of
Yeah, because with the best preseason,
it.
that you mentioned, it kind of makes sense, right? Because we've had a bunch of games that he's been in, right, where he's doing something, that's basically gone viral, right? Of course, we had the hyped up matchup between him and Chet for Oklahoma City,
Hmm.
and again, you don't usually hear these type of matchups and discussions talked about in the preseason, right? Like
Right.
people always like talk about preseason just because it's the basketball that we have to go off of, but there's never usually like a super amount of excitement for it, unless like there's some shocking thing, right? Like maybe a team that we think will do good has a horrible preseason, or a team that we don't think will be good has a good preseason. And again, preseason is a small sample size, so it doesn't always amount to a whole lot, but still, um, yeah, I think overall, if you're the Spurs, you got to be pretty thrilled because you got the number one pick, and he looks like he's legit. Right out of the gate, he's going to be able to contribute. Like I said, I think the lineup that they got is intriguing in the sense of you got Sohan running the point guard. But again, I'm assuming that's just probably just to put more bodies out there, so that way you don't have to put a bunch of rebounding pressure on Wenbanyama. He doesn't have to hit the glass as hard, as he would have to if he was at the five and you had like a traditional type lineup where you got some smaller guys, as your backcourt or at the forward spot. So,
Yeah.
like I said, but again, a lot to look forward to. I think for the Spurs this season, they're not going to be like an ugly team to look at. I mean, like last year, they had a lot of games where guys just weren't playing. But now that you got a number one pick on there, it looks like he's legit. That's going to be a fun team to watch. I think all year.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
Yeah. And again, like outside of that, right? Like not too many other things, and that we missed out on, right? In regards, like we had the Lakers Suns game, with LeBron and Durant playing time against one another since what was it like 2018?
Hmm.
But it was really only the first half, right, where those guys played. They didn't really play in the second half. Still regardless, that was kind of cool to see. Um, Bucks Grizzlies, right? Obviously that was another situation where, we got to see another pairing of Lillard and Giannis, right, as they kind of start to work out, the kinks. And Middleton played as well,
Hmm.
right? Looked kind of rough, 2 of 6 in that opening, right? 5 points, 5 assists, but again, he hasn't played really at all this preseason, so
Yeah, I'm in love with
I
the
think he's
juice
one
and
of
the
the
Mary
teams that
Jane.
even
I just
outside
pull
of
up to her like smoking a
Giannis
different strain.
again, he now slides into that third spot as the part of their big three. And he hasn't been healthy the last couple of years. And if he is healthy, that raises the ceiling of their team. But if he's not, right, then that might make their championship quest a little tougher. It doesn't completely put it out of reach, but he's really their only you know, super above average wing option that they have, right? Because the
Yeah.
other guys, who would be playing wing, like say Pat Connaughton, right? He's fine, but he's more of a backup. He's not really a starter. Marshawn Beauchamp, right? He's a second year guy, right? So how much do you expect out of him, right? He's been fine this preseason, but still, Jay Crowder, right? And he's more of a 4 at this point. He's not really a 3. So you kind of need Middleton, to kind of tap into his, previous self, right? Because without that, I think it's going to be a lot tougher, especially again, your main competition in the East, Boston, right? That's their strength is their wings, their forward spot. So, hopefully he can kind of find himself this year in terms of getting back to health. But I think it will be easier to ease him back to it with the addition of Lillard because now you're not relying on him as much for his offense. But still, I think he needs to come back on both ends of the floor, not just his scoring.
Yeah. I mean, like, the key is he's gonna alleviate so much pressure from Giannis and Damian Lillard if he plays at a really good level. But like you just said, the other guys are also gonna do the same for him. So say Dame and Giannis have a great night, then you don't need a great Middleton night. But I think it's gonna be very crucial to the Bucks' success when it comes to games where Damian Lillard and Giannis may not be playing the best. They're gonna need Chris Middleton to step up and be on his A game. So I definitely agree with everything that you said.
Yeah, I mean, because again, you're going against a team where, like I said, that's their strength, and maybe you don't face them, but we feel like they're the two best teams in the Eastern Conference. So, at a certain point, you're probably not going to be able to avoid them. So, like I said, I'm intrigued to see what Milwaukee does with their new head coach, right? Because again, that's a factor where you had Budenholzer, who did win a lot of games and win a title, right? But they did get eliminated in the first round, and they felt like they needed to change. So, but either way, with Boston, right? They got a guy in his second year, so he's a young coach as well. Even though he did have, a season's worth of stuff to go through, right? But last year was, kind of thrown together, right? Where again, Udoka was gone, and then you didn't really have a whole lot of assistance. So now this is kind of his first real shot, to show that he can, be a real legitimate head coach as well. So,
Yeah.
we'll see. Again, the East I think will be a battle, for those two spots. You know what I mean? I feel like the others are kind of in another tier. But again, like so far, I like the potential of the Lillard Giannis pairing, even though
Yeah.
they've only played a few games so far this preseason. I
Yeah.
think the stuff we talked about in terms of how it would work on offense. It seems like that's how what they're gonna do, right? Pick and roll. Giannis going downhill, Dame being able to pull up from deep. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's a very seamless fit. We talked about it when it first happened.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be even akin to the Chris Paul thing. It's gonna be poetry, basketball poetry. I think it's gonna be great. Um, we just need to see them come playoff time. I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Um, so now I think we're probably going to get into this next part where, like our early kind of guesses, predictions for awards and maybe the potential finals matchup. Of course, some of this stuff is like very rough drafty, not in the sense of like because the season hasn't started yet. So for now everything's kind of on paper. But let's start with the MVP. So my pick for MVP, I'm gonna kind of zag a little bit, and I'm gonna go with Jason Tatum.
Oh,
I don't think,
okay.
and like I don't know necessarily what the odds are because I haven't really looked. I don't think he's the favorite. I think it's Jokic,
It's
if I'm
Jokic.
not
Jokic
mistaken.
is plus 400.
Yeah, so I mean, the potential cases, again, with the Celtics, I feel like they made some big improvements in the offseason, or at the very least, improvements in talent. I feel like as long as, the other guys are healthy, they're going to win a lot of games. Tatum generally plays a lot of games, and you got to play at least 65, I'm pretty sure, to get the MVP award. Because some of the other guys that may have a chance, they may not that list. Um, and then, in addition, he's getting closer to that age where he should be getting ready to enter his prime. Um, and I think an MVP version of Tatum is a version of Boston that is, has a good shot at winning the title. You know what I mean? Like if
Mhm.
Tatum's not in the MVP discussion, right, then I feel like that makes it a lot rougher. But I'm assuming that he will be. So that's my pick for MVP. But again, I feel like this is a zag because I think there's also a high probability that it doesn't happen. But I feel like in the East, it's the weaker conference. So the team with the best record is probably going to be one of the two Eastern Conference teams, and that tends to be like if you get that combined with good stats, which obviously he can put up good numbers, that kind of is the formula for winning that award.
Yeah. And I kind of want to speak to yours just a little bit. At first, I thought it was hot. That's why I kind of scoffed at it. I was like, didn't really
Right.
think of it. But thinking about it now, it's like, now that he has even more help than he has in the past few years, he's got Porzingis, Andrew Holiday, and to buy into the meme, he's only 25. So, I mean,
Right.
like, they do have a chance, I guess, at even getting the best record just based on how good this team is on paper. So, I think what we'll probably see is like, if he's in the front running for it, I think the reason will be he's probably the best player on the best team in the NBA. I think that's what we'll probably be
Right.
seeing. So I can get down with that. Mine's a little bit more interesting, or not more interesting, but I guess a little weirder because I have a really big problem with this award. I don't like how it's dished
Yeah.
out. You already know, like we
Right.
we squabbled over who should have been
Yeah.
MVP, and I think Embiid was a fraud, but um my my MVP is Giannis. Um,
Oh, okay. I like
I
that one too.
Yeah, this one's kind of the same reason for Tatum pretty much. I think, the Bucks can potentially be the best team in the league. If Damian Lillard is playing at his pinnacle and Giannis is as well. I think that duo is probably the best in the league at that point. But yeah, so it's same logic. The best player on the best team, I think narrative is probably going to be something that we'll see because I think that's been, the long time successful path to winning the MVP. Um, and I don't know. I mean, he's finished what, like fourth, third, and third in like the last three
Yeah, it's
seasons.
been like top five like every year for the
Yeah.
last several years,
So he's
including he
always
won.
yeah. So he's
So,
always been there, and I think just them being on the verge of this big season and potentially even winning the NBA Finals if everything, um, if everybody does their part and everything goes their way. I think Giannis would probably be number one in the leaderboards, but I don't think Jokic or even Tatum would be too far behind him.
right, yeah, like even though Jokic has already won too, those are guys who are like I'm not saying that none of those guys have a chance, right? Like I'm
Right.
just saying like that's my potential pick for MVP. But again, I also acknowledge like yeah, Jokic, he doesn't miss a lot of games either. And if Denver once again has one of the best records, yeah, he could get it. Since they gave it to Embiid last year, and then
Exactly.
they could be like, well, we gave it to him last year, so now we can give it back to you,
Right.
or whatever,
Right.
or yeah. So we'll see, but I think that those picks, yeah, it feels like it makes sense because I mean, there's also some other potential guys that could win it if things go their way, right? I think like maybe like a Booker if the Suns have a really good record,
Really?
maybe
Okay.
maybe, but
I was gonna
again, how
ask you
many?
what your dark horses were, if you had any.
Yeah, but then again, how many games is he going to play? How many games are they going to win? Right? Steph could potentially be another one if the Warriors win like a boat, more games than last year, and they're like a
Right.
top 4 seed.
What would you
Because he
think of
doesn't have
Luca?
like yeah, Luca, I think he was also like the second best odds. I just don't know if Dallas is gonna win enough games because like, we talked about it in the offseason where we felt like they had a good offseason in terms of the, things that they did, but they just haven't looked that great. And now, we don't know if Luca's gonna play to start the season. He
Right.
might, but that's our, Jason Kidd's kind of put that in doubt. And maybe they can still win, obviously, but I don't know. Like if he's not like if Dallas would need to be like a top 4 seed, I feel like for him to get MVP, unless he plays like 70 plus games
Right.
and just puts up like insane numbers. Because I think when Jokic won it in his second year. They were like the 6th seed.
Hmm.
But they still won like 50 games or whatever, I think, because that was the West as opposed to the East. But still, like that's the issue is I think for Luka to get it, I think like his team would probably have to be better. But I think he could put up the numbers just because again, outside of Kyrie, who are you really expecting to put up like big offensive numbers
Right.
other than those two guys? So it's a potential pick. I think it just depends on how many games Dallas wins, right? Because for the others, I'm assuming, like, I'm expecting the Celtics to win a lot of games. I'm expecting the Bucks to win a lot of games,
Yeah,
right? I'm
I
expecting the
agree.
Suns to win a decent amount of games, assuming guys are healthy. Whereas with Dallas, I don't know. It's like, but I think like it's a potential dark horse pick for sure because he's been like in those odds before where like he's looked at as like a Vegas potential like top 3 favorite because again we know he puts up crazy numbers and
Hmm.
they had that year a couple seasons ago where they did win like 50 games so he's got a shot. I just don't know if his team is good enough because they just
Right.
haven't looked that good so far, but it is only preseason to be fair. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. Moving on to rookie of the year. I got Victor Wembanyama. I mean, of course, you know, there's always the possibility that like a Scoot or a Chet could win it. Um, I think the issue again with Chet is I just feel like there's so much talent on Oklahoma City for him to be able to put up like enough numbers because the rookie of the year definitely is a numbers award, right? Like you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because like it's not impacted by the standings, it's not impacted by the other stuff. It's the numbers.
Right.
And I just feel like his numbers are probably going to be the most insane out of any of these other guys. Other than maybe Scoot could get it, but as of right now, assuming Portland doesn't make any moves within the next week or so, they have a number of guards on the roster where it's like I could see him not necessarily putting up bad stats, but just like not putting up like wild stats. You know what I mean? Because they have other guys like a Brogdon, like a Shaden Sharp, or a Anthony Simon. They have a lot of other guys that need the ball. Jeremy Grant as well. Whereas with the Spurs, right, I feel like it'll probably be easier for him. Not that those guys are bad, but just in regards to like you could say like he's already like the second or third or whatever best player on his team, maybe the best one. We'll see. You couldn't say he's just the best one right now, but
Hmm.
regardless, like compared to Scoot, like there's some other guys with a little bit more pedigree right now. Not that they're like way better, but you know what I mean. Like I just don't think he'll put up the same numbers. So I feel like with Victor, he's gonna do that. They don't have to win a ton of games. I guess the main question is how many games does he play? Because again, if he's either hurt, knock on wood, or whatever, right? They tank down the end of the towards the end of the season. Maybe he doesn't play enough, but I feel like he probably will.
Yeah.
So that's my pick, and I feel like again, I feel like he's right now probably the odds-on favorite, but
He is.
I'm sure the other guys
He's
aren't
mi-
far behind.
he's minus 110. Um,
Yeah,
Everyone else is like plus 275, plus 250. So, um, and yeah, Wemby's my pick as well. I mean, it pretty much goes without saying. I think you hit on all the good points. We already know his generational talent. I know that there was a dip in his
yeah,
odds. I think after draft night because of the poor debut in the summer league. But since
right,
then he's
yeah,
pretty, and which we saw in person. But since then he's kind of squashed any doubt regarding his poor offense. So I
yeah.
think he's gonna knock it out of the park this season,
That's
which
what
should
makes me higher on his odds to win, just because the
exactly.
offense is a lot
Like
better.
I think Chet has a good chance defensively. I think that's the reason why he could be in the conversation, but offensively I think Victor kind of just overpowers him a little bit more. Um and I think like you said, the numbers and the volumes of shots that he'll be getting. I think they'll look to play through Victor more so than OKC would look to play through Chet Holmgren, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Um, and then I guess we'll go into um defensive player of the year. This one is a really hard one for me because like I still in a way like almost have it like in a three-way tie. Like so I have three guys, on here and it's like I got Giannis, I got Triple J and even AD.
Oh, okay.
Giannis I feel like is
I feel like
Giannis I
AD is
yeah,
hot. Just
80's
saying.
the Zag one. But with Giannis, I feel like of those three, he's gonna play the most games because I think with Triple J, he misses time. AD misses time as well. But then at the same time, the thing with the Bucks is in order for him to win it, they have to have like a top, tier defense. And right now, I don't know if they're gonna be able to get there, right now, just because again, the guards, it's not great. The wings, it's not great. You're kind of really heavily relying on Giannis and Lopez to kind of, lock it down
Hmm.
defensively. Um, so that's the only reason why, like, I don't know if he's gonna win it. And then, like I said, with Jaren Jackson Jr., then the issue for him is, Ja's out, right? And we'll get into it later, but some other guys are out as well.
Yeah.
So that makes it tougher. So like then like the next guy, I'm like, it's either gotta be like either a Draymond or an AD. Um, and I'm gonna go with AD because I feel like for most of his career, he's had opportunities to win it, just hasn't played enough. But I do think this year he's had a healthy offseason. He hasn't, really had any issues playing through games, right? So like I feel like this is probably the year where we'll finally have like a healthy season in a while, and I think he'll be able to crack it. And I think with the Lakers being a better team than they had been the last couple of years, that's also um, you know, the way that I think he can get it as well, right? Because that first year with Westbrook, they came in thinking they were going to be good. They just ended up not being good. And then last year, we knew going into the year they weren't going to be good. Whereas now we're going into the year expecting them to be better. And I think, again, with his age now at 30, I think it's probably kind of time for him to kind of be like the go-to guy, really on both ends for the team. And so that's what I'm going to do. I think, like I said, it's a zag, but I think he can do it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the AD take. I understand it, but I don't agree
Yeah.
with it. But
Right.
mine is a complete zag, and it kind of stems from our hot takes segment that one time. So, yeah, I'm going Chat Depoy. I know
Okay.
you guys can kill me in the comments. I know that's rough, but at the same time, it's more of a gamble. I know there's definitely more qualified candidates. We can even look around and Evan Mobley, like you said,
Yeah.
Giannis, Gobert, Bam, Brooke Lopez. There's even AD, like you said, but Triple J, of course, too. But I don't know. Something about Chet just makes me think he's gonna win it. I don't know. I
Mhm.
just feel like they might just try and funnel guys to him. I think he has that kind of potential
Right.
and sneaky. He's got the sneaky athleticism,
Right.
um, with that sneaky defensive prowess. So that's kind of the reason why I'm going with it. And I think it's his frame, um, and it's a rare frame. So that's pretty much my reasoning. I
I
know it's
think
hot. It's hot.
yeah. I think if Oklahoma City is gonna be like what's the word I'm looking for? If they're gonna like be their best case scenario type of team,
Mm-hmm.
that's where it would get closer to like, okay, he's coming in, he's already ready.
Right.
He's doing it on both ends of the floor, especially defensively. Right. That's the scenario where like if he's gonna do that, then that means that Oklahoma City is gonna probably need to be like a top five, team in the Western
Yeah.
Conference, right? Where like if they're closer to being like a playing team, right, then that's where it's like, oh, he might still be solid, right, but he might not be completely there yet. So these are definitely, I think, some pretty, you know, not I don't want to say unlikely, but I feel like most people wouldn't pick either of these guys,
No. No.
because
No.
again, I think with Chet, he's so young, and
Mm-hmm.
you just don't expect Oklahoma City to be like a top five defensive team. And then with AD, obviously the issue is the games played. Is he going to be able to play enough? I actually need to check because some people have said that the 65 game limit is only for like All NBA and then like MVP.
Mm.
And but I'm not sure. I need to check and make sure
It
because
should
I
be
I
for
thought
everything.
yeah, because I thought when we heard about it last year, it was that it's for all the awards and not just some. Because like yeah, it should be for all of them. Um, for this upcoming season. Like I think but I don't know. But like I said, I thought it was that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it says it's to be eligible for postseason awards. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
that's what I heard. I remember when we first talked
Yeah,
about
I
it.
think some people misread it because like when
Hmm.
I first heard that when we talked about it, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that it makes sense to do it for all of them, not
Hmm.
some of them. That would just be weird.
Yeah.
Um, so moving on, six man of the year. I'm gonna go with Chris Paul.
Okay.
I don't think that's a super hot takey one. I know there's some other guys that could be potential, candidates on here as well. But I think with Chris Paul, given the fact that he's still a good player, and I think Golden State's gonna make him a sixth man. Of course, it depends on Draymond's issue, but it seems like he should be ready to go within the first week. I know they haven't said he's completely in for the opener, but even if he misses the first game, will probably be back like for the second or third. But regardless, it doesn't matter. You got to, come off the bench more games than you start. So I think With that, I think Golden State, at least for the regular season, will have a bounce back in terms of the games win, and I think Chris Paul will be part of that, where he's helping out with the second unit and also closing games, setting guys up, running the offense, at a more steady rate than Jordan Poole. Not to take shots at Poole, right? Because Poole's more of a scorer as opposed to a playmaker passer. Um, so again, I think this is kind of like an easy one, but at the same time, again, there's other guys that have a chance to do it as well. But I feel like he's kind of like the sort of like the odds on one just because again, where he is talent wise in the league, and now he's coming off the bench going against, second units initially as opposed
Hmm.
to starters. But at the same time, again, is he gonna play 65 games? We'll see.
Yeah. Um, I would normally I think, if Chris Paul is coming off the bench, that would be my guy too.
Yeah.
But I don't know that for sure, so I'm just gonna go with Emmanuel quickly. I think that's probably the safest pick, to be honest. I know a lot of people are high on Derek White, Bobby Portis, Josh Hart, guys like that, but I don't know. For me, I'm just looking at the numbers. I think he, averaged like 14.9 points per game, so basically 15 in
Right.
a six-man role last year. So I think it'll go up, and it would be interesting to see him increase the amount of points that he puts up, and be one of the leading bench scorers in the NBA. And especially if he's going to be on a playoff team, I think the Warriors are going to be a playoff team too. But like I said, I don't know if Chris Paul is going to be on the bench or starting or not. So
Yeah.
um,
I do
that's why I'm going to
wonder.
go with quickly.
Yeah, I do wonder, with the Dante DiVincenzo thing, like, does that not that that lowers his minutes, but now like the Knicks have more guards,
Sure.
that they're gonna put out there. So like, maybe I mean, I'm not saying that they're not gonna play him because Tibbs will play him,
Mm-hmm.
especially if he's playing well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder, like, how does that kind of affect the guard rotation in
Right.
terms of like, shots? I know DiVincenzo doesn't take a lot of shots; he's not a volume shooter, but still. I do wonder because there is a world where, like, if his signing pans out and he defends well and shoots well, then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that could potentially help quickly even more because that's another guy to give the ball to, another guy to help you out on defense.
Yeah.
You can play him out there in smaller lineups, so that that is, I think, a solid pick because there were people who thought he could have won it last year. Brogdon ended up winning it, but you never know because sometimes, like, there's situations where it's like, oh, this guy didn't win it last year, but he's still putting up good numbers, so now he can win it this year.
Right.
As opposed to the year before. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I think if Chris Paul is a starter, then yeah, that's a good one as well. Because again, with Brogdon, he's in a different situation now. I'm assuming he'll still come off the bench, but I don't think he'll win it back to back. So I feel like if Chris Paul is a starter or just doesn't play enough games, and I feel like it makes sense to be quickly, right? Like Hero's a starter, right? He's been a starter since last year, so he wouldn't be in it. Poole is going to start for the Wizards, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
had the preseason, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, so he's not going to get it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good pick if it's not Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most improved. I feel like this is one that could be up for grabs by a lot of people. Um, so I've had a hard time, but I believe in it, so I'm gonna go with Anthony Edwards. I think, um,
Woo! That's
yeah, I
hot.
think,
That's hot.
yeah,
In my opinion, that's hot.
again, I think he's young. He already had a really good year last year. So in fairness, they don't always give most improved to guys whose, numbers go up by a little bit. But I think his playmaking will be better. I think his efficiency will be better. I think his defense will be better. He'll just be a better player overall. I think Minnesota will do better in the regular season, assuming good health. And I think if they are a better team, then it will be because of him. And so I'm expecting him, to take another jump forward. Again, of course, yeah, I could get egg on my face like, 3 months into the season, and it's like, oh, he's playing well, but maybe the leap isn't quite enough, and somebody else went from like here to here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think because again, this is a tough one because I think there's a lot of guys that could win it.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the guy that I'm gonna pick because I have been high on him, not quite as high as maybe some others, but I think high enough where it's like I could see him winning most improved. But I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear yours because I feel like it's probably gonna be different.
Yeah, it's quite different. It's
Yeah.
a guy who's probably not even on the same tier list. But it's Jordan Poole. I know that's probably
Okay.
Wizards bias. Oh, goodness, voice cracked. Wizards bias. Um, but my thought process was, I think the award normally goes to players that are in a new situation or granted a new opportunity, and I think that's where we kind of see the pattern. And the favorites for those awards, win it. So I know Jordan Poole's not a favorite at all. He's probably, I think his odds are like plus 1,000 or something like that. But I don't know. It's interesting. He backed up Steph, so I'm thinking he's primed and ready to take a leap that we're not expecting. Even Kevin Garnett said he's probably going to make a James Harden esque leap. So I'm curious to see, if that actually comes to fruition. And even like a guy like Tyus Jones, I would even throw him in the mix too, because I mean they both backed up pretty good point guards, and then now they're being thrust into starting positions, brand new opportunities. So I don't know. It should be interesting. And I think we'll probably see Jordan Poole's numbers increase a lot just based on the volume of shots he's going to be putting up. It may not be efficient, but I think the number increase will probably outweigh maybe the impact increase that we'd be looking at from a guy like Anthony Edwards. Like I like the Anthony Edwards one, hadn't really crossed my mind, but I just got to go with Jordan Poole.
Yeah, Poole, obviously, went from being a guy coming off the bench last season to
Mm-hmm.
now a starter. Um, last year he averaged 20 points, 3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, right? 43 from the field, just under 34 from 33.5. So that means he's gonna have to get up to like 25, 28, I feel like a game, which he could do
I
because
think
again
he
on this,
will.
which he could do because on this Wizards team he's gonna have a lot of opportunities, and also you are somebody who thinks that the Wizards will win more than their over under, and so
Mm-hmm.
if they do, right, then that would probably have to be part of it, right? Where he actually ends up having, a bounce back year where, his efficiency's back and his numbers are up,
Yep.
right? That's the best case scenario. So I think that's a good pick. It seems like the odds on favorite is Mikal Bridges, which
Yeah.
is interesting, for Brooklyn. I mean, that is understandable, right? Because again, he's going to go from, only playing there for half a season, right? Or, 30 games or whatever it was to now a full season in Brooklyn where he'll have the ball a lot, right? They didn't really make any upgrades in terms of their guards, right? So if his numbers continue to go from what they were last season to this season, that's a good pick. Tyrese Maxey as well, right? He's another guy on that list. I think that makes sense, especially if Harden gets moved, right? That's where I think there's definitely
Yeah.
potential for numbers to go up big time. Then Cade Cunningham is third,
Yeah.
right?
I
So that's
saw that.
another one where, yeah, if he has like a great year, right, that makes a lot of sense. As well. Yeah, it looks like Poole is like seventh on this list.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's the seventh one behind,
Yeah.
right below Josh Giddey, and then
Mm-hmm. And
right
there's
above
guys like
Scottie
Jalen
Barnes.
Green, Okongwu, John Collins. It's just an interesting list. I feel like it's up for the taking, like you said. It's up for grabs. It's interesting that Anthony Edwards. Where does he fall on this? Or is he not even in the list? Because I feel like he
I
might be too good to be considered for this
yeah,
award. That might be the
yeah.
thing.
Well, in fairness, I think what was it 2 seasons ago? Ja, I think was the guy that won it, right? When a
Yeah.
lot of people thought, like that Jordan Poole could have won it because he went from a G League bench guy,
Right.
to being a starter.
Right.
Um, so but Ja ended up winning it, and he was already really good. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like the factor where I'm like, yeah, there's a world where Edwards can win it if he goes from being like all star to like all NBA,
Right.
right? That's the jump where he could get it. But if he's just like all star to like better all star, he won't win it.
Yeah. I get
So
that.
yeah. Um, Clutch Player of the Year. So this one is kind of like a shot in the dark. I feel like for me, because, unlike the
Yeah.
other ones, it's like I feel like there's a lot more luck that goes into this award than some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you could have two guys who play really well late in games, but one of them like is on a losing team and then the other one's on a winning team.
Right. Right.
Last year was De'Aaron Fox. Um, like I said, I'm gonna go with a shot in the dark, and I'm gonna pick Curry for this one
Hmm.
because I think with the Chris Paul addition, and I know it was one game, right? But at the end of the Kings game, you could see like Chris Paul was kind of like steadying the offense. At times either setting stuff up for shots or just letting him kind of like do his own thing. And I think that will help his efficiency. At the end of the games, especially with Golden State, they were not a very good team late in games last year, right? That was a reason why their record was as poor as it was. That was one of the reasons why they lost to the Lakers, because they couldn't close. And I think with Chris Paul, I think they will be better in late game situations, and I think that will help Steph. And again, like I said, it's a shot in the dark, but I think this is a potential, sleeper one where it's like this is one of those where it's like you wouldn't expect it,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like you could see it happen. But I
Yeah.
could be wrong because again, I feel like this one is a very random award.
Okay. I agree in terms of, what you're talking about with the randomness of the award. And I think that's the problem is like anybody can win this dang award because there's no real statistical, measure that they use to um, prove who's the winner. I mean, I guess you could look at clutch points. And if we're going to go by
Yeah.
that, then I'm going with Dame. I think,
Okay.
him in a new situation, um, the lights are going to be brighter. And I think he's going to be able to step up to the plate with that. And he's just going to be able to command. I think you'd rather have Dame taking, a game-winning mid-range or three than Giannis or Chris Middleton. So I think they'll
Yeah.
look to, run the offense late in games through Damian Lillard just because he has that clutch gene and it's proven. But I wouldn't count out De'Aaron Fox because it wouldn't surprise me if he wins it again.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's a good one as well because again, you look at it from the perspective of you got Giannis who can play downhill, and then that opens the floor up for both of them. It
Hmm.
opens up the floor for Lillard, and then Lillard opens up the floor for Giannis. And like you said, with the ball in his hands, because Lillard can shoot so well from anywhere, with the ball in his hands, it makes a lot of sense. That can help the Bucks, close out these games.
Right.
So I think because again in the playoffs, and obviously Giannis was hurt, right? But their late game stuff against the Heat was pretty awful.
Yeah.
And I
It
think
was
with
trifling. It was bad.
yeah, and again, like Giannis was hurt, but there were still other aspects of it where it just felt like that they just didn't do a great job of executing down the stretch. But I think with Lillard that will not happen. So I think that's a good pick as well.
Yeah.
Um, I'm liking the discussion with these because there's
Yeah.
definitely like a lot of even though like even on the ones where like where they're different, like I think both of them make a lot of sense.
Yeah. We only
Um,
agreed on Wemby, but I think we both like the picks that we
yeah.
put forth.
And then for coach of the year, uh, I'm gonna go with Mark Daigneault. That's the coach for Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Um, and I think with Oklahoma City, I think they will be better this year. Obviously their roster is very young, so of course, again, this is another potential egg on the face type of pick. But just regardless, I mean, you got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I know, I'm sure I caught some flack for saying I don't think he's a top 10 guy, but he can certainly get into that top 10 in my eyes this year. As he continues to get better. Other guys on the roster can continue to get better because they're young, right? Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. With the addition of Chet, right? I think his length on both ends of the floor will help them be able to win games a lot more. Because they did a lot last year. I think they were 40 and 42, and they didn't have a center. But now you have one, even though he's not like a traditional center, but you have a guy with more size. And I think all those additions, and I think Dagnall already showed again, even without a center, they won almost 50% of their games when nobody expected them to. And
Hmm.
I think Joni's really good at that. And I think he's got more talent coming in this year. So I think he could get it because coach of the year, they don't always give it to the team with the best record. They sometimes do.
Hmm.
Uh, but say like who was the winner last season, right? I don't think it wasn't Budenholzer.
It
It
was
was
Mike
somebody
Brown,
else.
right?
Yeah, it was Mike Brown.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And they didn't have the best record in the
That was due to
NBA.
improvement, though.
Yeah, exactly. And that was due to improvement. So that's what I'm saying. So like this is another one of those awards where it's not necessarily just about the record. We've seen it before.
Hmm.
But again, I don't think it has to be, and it hasn't been. So I think in this case, that's my case for Dagnall winning it. But I think there's some other good candidates as well, right? Like if the Suns have a good year, it could be Vogel.
Hmm.
Um, of course, if the Celtics or the Bucks have a crazy record, right? Missoula or Griffin could win it, right? Or if the Sixers, which I don't think will happen, right? If they have like some wild season where they're like towards the top of the East, right? Could it be Nick Nurse? You know what I mean? Like there are other options, but my pick is Dagnall, at least for right now. Because again, these are early picks where it's like, you know, these are kind of like all shots in the dark. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, thought about it strategically for a lot of these, but they could all change just depending on who's healthy, right? Who ends up doing whatever, who pops, you know how it is.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I kind of brought up two guys. I initially had Taylor Jenkins, that's the Memphis coach. I know that one's kind of a weird one, but I feel like if he powers through the John Morant suspension, I think that will boost, potentially him and his winnings on this because I think if he's able to win a decent amount of those games, that puts them in the potential driver's seat in the West. But there are some other things that we do have to talk about later on in the podcast, but that will impact I think their record and maybe that award. But I'm probably gonna go with Adrian Griffin just because he's the new guy on the block. And for him to be a first year head coach, I think it'll be interesting, to see if he can win that award with the talent and the roster that he has, with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think, him and him, Dame, Giannis. I mean, I feel like that you just can't mess that up. I'm gonna be curious to see, how far they go in the playoffs. They should go to the finals, in my opinion. I know battling with Boston would definitely be something that we have to look into, but as of right now, I'd probably go with Adrian Griffin.
Like I said, I think that makes sense. We've seen rookie head coaches win it before.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Kerr, I believe he won it right that first year when they went 67-15.
Mm-hmm.
So we've definitely seen it before.
Yeah.
Does it happen a ton? Not necessarily, but again, even though he's a rookie head coach, he's coming into a situation where he's got a lot of talent to work with, that
Right.
can win you a lot of regular season games. So I think that's a good pick as well.
Yeah.
Um, so so this one now I'm gonna switch it over to you and let you do yours first. So your early, potential finals prediction. Again, hey, we're 0-0 right now, so these are all potential shots in the dark. Let's hear it. Is it something crazy? Is it something, kind of vanilla? What is it? Let's hear it.
You know, it took me a long time when we first started planning and talking about this. It took me a while to piece this together. Um, and for me, in the West, I think I should start in the West just because it's stronger. Um, I'm gonna go Denver. I think Denver's gonna go back. I don't think anybody's figured out the recipe to stopping Jokic. I don't think this offseason was enough time. I don't think there were enough adjustments for any team in the West per se to get past what Denver was able to pull off last year. I know Denver did lose some things, but at the same time, they were already so good. There was no real reason for them to go out and get anything crazy, and they just replaced it with youth. So, not a big issue for me. Going into the East is a little bit more difficult. It's hard to pick between, I feel like, Boston and Milwaukee, but I'm probably going to go with Boston. Something tells me, kind of similar to what your thoughts were on the MVP stuff with Tatum. I feel like Tatum's prime for, one of the best seasons that we may ever see, in the NBA. I think Tatum's going to go off. On top of the fact that he has some real help, I think this is one of the most underrated super teams of all time on paper. You've got a glitchy footer that can do pretty much everything offensively and defensively. And then obviously you've got Drew Holiday, which is the best perimeter defender in the NBA. So coupled with two stars, I don't know. I just don't see Boston going out to anybody except Milwaukee due to the fact that they have Lillard and Giannis. But we shall see. For me, that's my finals matchup. So I'm
Okay.
curious to hear
Do you
yours. I
have
think.
like a
Hmm?
sorry, what were we gonna say?
No, I was just saying I was curious to hear yours.
Do you have a winner, or do you just have like that
Ooh.
matchup?
Um, Winner, I would probably go with Denver. I feel
Okay.
like you can put all the talent in the world against Denver. You have
hmm
to be able to stop Jokic because I feel like talent is something that's stoppable in terms of, you can beat Boston, I think, with height, but you can't really beat Denver unless you know how to stop Jokic, and nobody really knows how to do it because it seems like whenever the ball's not in his hand, somebody else is going off on that Denver team, and it may not be a star per se. So we'll see, but I'm gonna go with Denver. I think Denver's gonna back to back it.
Okay, that's interesting because with the Denver Boston one, I think Denver would be more likely to beat Boston if they met. Whereas like I think Milwaukee could beat Denver, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I feel like Boston can beat Milwaukee. So
Right.
like for the East, I got the Celtics. Because again, like I said, I've been going back and
I
forth
know.
on it just because it's so tough. Because again, like I like with the Bucks, it's like I feel like I trust Giannis more so than I do say like Tatum.
I agree.
Playoffs, and it's not even that Tatum's bad. It's just again, Giannis has already done it.
Right.
I know like he's not obviously a great outside shooter or anything, but at the same time, I do feel like the Celtics have made like quote unquote more improvements than the Bucks, where it's like I feel like with the Celtics they got better on offense while like not completely tanking their defense. Like they should still be a really good defensive
Mm-hmm.
team. Um just from the perspective of, like you said, you got Holiday, the best perimeter defender. You got Tatum and Brown, who are terrific defensively, and even Porzingis, right, from last year, right? He was a good, he was good defensively around the rim as a rim protector. Derek White, right? Horford can still defend. So, and they have pieces to trade. But I don't have Denver going back to back. I
Ooh,
actually don't this time.
who is it?
I think
Phoenix.
it's very difficult to win back to back.
Okay.
I think in that regards, like I know those guys are in their primes, they're young, but you got to stay healthy. And I do think the West got better. But I got another team, that's potentially coming out of
Why
there.
do I think this is Golden State?
No, it is not Golden
Okay,
State.
good.
It is not Golden State. Um, I have your other favorite team other than Boston, for the right to number 18 between these two squads. And I think you know who that is.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So in my season awards, you know how I mentioned like I have Tatum as MVP, right? And I had AD as Defensive Player of the Year. That's where like I said, that's kind of what ties into those seasons awards because I'm thinking from that perspective. I know with Denver, you mentioned like the thought about like being able to stop Jokic, but at the same time, I feel like we have seen historically like guys put up great performances, but it may not have necessarily mattered, just depending on the matchup. Because say like maybe in the past, right, we saw like LeBron, right, put up crazy numbers against the Durant Warriors, but it just didn't matter because that team was more talented.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I think, with LA, and again, if LeBron and AD get hurt, it's all a wash. But you can say that for a lot of teams, right? Same with Lillard, Giannis. Say if the Celtics have some crazy injury, right, with Porzingis, right, they're not going to be able to get to the finals if he gets hurt. And that's a gamble as well. Um, but I think they've made some real progression with their offense. I think with the D'Angelo Russell piece, I think there's potential for him to be moved, maybe, and maybe he doesn't get moved. Um, but with that contract, I think you could potentially bring in some other random piece um, at the deadline. And I think those games it was a sweep, but I do think at the very least, like the games were close. They just couldn't score at the end of games, but I think they'll be better late in games. So like I said, for that regard, I don't think Denver is going to go back to back. But I
Hmm.
think, again, we talked about it in the past where I think Denver's got the best chance of the last several teams to go back to back because you have a guy in their prime compared to, say, with the Lakers, right? You got the issue of LeBron is in his year 21 season, right? AD's already 30, even though, again, 30 is not old, but he does have a lot of injuries. Of course, with Golden State, the issue for them is, their core is older. So all these teams have flaws. Um, but I do think again, it's going to be a fight like to the death basically for these matchups. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is not going to be like a situation where like, oh, this team is good enough where, these teams are going to get swept. No, I think it'll be a crazy competitive series, but I think they might have been able to do enough where they might be able to close it out. But again, with Denver, if Jamal Murray takes another step forward, then that's going to be a lot tougher, I think, for
Yeah.
any team. Just because, again, I think those two guys fit together probably better, as good, if not better than anybody, any duo for the most part. I'm kind of surprised you didn't go with the Suns because I know
I
you
know.
liked, a lot of the stuff that they did in the offseason, as did I. But, I was kind of surprised you didn't go with the Suns. I don't know why. I was fully expecting you to go
Yeah.
with the Suns.
I was teetering between the two, oddly enough. I
Yeah,
feel like the
I was.
Suns I feel like the Suns
Yeah.
have a better chance than the Lakers. I feel like the
Mhm.
Suns have a better chance, the second best chance. If
Okay.
Denver didn't exist, I'd be talking about the Suns right now. But
Okay.
just from what I've seen and just from what I'm thinking, I could just feel that Denver nobody has the recipe to take them out. I can already just see it. I don't think LA got better to the point where they have enough to take out Jokic. Because I know it sounds like I'm glazing Jokic, but I mean, I feel like it's just I'm speaking
He's
facts
really
because
good.
I think he's that good. Simple as that.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
And if a guy's on a heater, there's nothing you can do
Oh
because
yeah.
we've seen it before. We saw it in last year's postseason, right? Where again, like he and Jamal Murray were on a heater. And when those guys are hot, there's nothing you can do. Just like we've
Right.
seen in the past with other duos or groups, like say when Steph and KD were cooking, right? There was nothing you could do. Or Shaq and Kobe, whichever duo you want to name, right? That's
Yeah.
one title. So it's definitely potentially there because I've heard some people talk about, is this a potential dynasty in the making? And again, it's possible. Because again, you got a guy in his prime, you got another guy that's potentially entering his prime. So it's there. It's just a matter of, again, the health also is a factor, not for Jokic, but for Jamal Murray, right? But in fairness to him, just like AD, right? This is the first offseason in a while, right, where he's not having to worry about going into another season, coming off of an injury, right? Jamal
Right.
Murray's coming off a terrific postseason, where he was one of the best guys in the entire playoffs. Um, and, is that going to carry into next season? It should.
I think it
But
will.
I feel like what you said, I do feel like Denver, again, like it's close. You know what I mean? Like I'm not somebody that thinks like, oh, like it's kind of like what you said about what Denver did in the offseason. Like, even though we didn't think Denver did a great job, it's not like we felt like, oh, Denver's cooked because, they
Right.
lost Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. Like
Right.
no serious person thinks that. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of like they're still going to be really good. They got all their core guys and they got more continuity than anybody. So
Yeah.
it's definitely possible because again, it's just I'm curious, but I am curious to see how it plays out this season because again, I do feel like in the Western Conference, that's the main thing I'm thinking of is that it's so competitive that you just never know, right? Where it's like in terms of the standings, you're one hamstring injury away from like a team being like going from like a top whatever seed to like a play-in spot, right?
And
You're
that's my
you
concern with
one
Phoenix, really.
Right. Yeah, and that's the issue for them. You're one bad matchup away from like, hey, if you were one seed higher or one seed lower, maybe you could go to the second round of the conference finals, but you ran into this team that you just don't match up against well, right? Like we
Right.
know because certain teams, like like the Lakers and Clippers, right? The Lakers historically have matched up not very well against the Clippers, right? So it's like if they match up against them in the playoffs, it might be tough. Um, say like the Warriors and the Lakers, right? We saw them last year where the Warriors just didn't match up well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it might be tough.
Or
Um,
Lakers, Denver.
yeah,
That
exactly.
was horrible. I'm sorry. Like that was bad, bro. That's why I'm so
Sure.
hyped up for Tuesday because I
Right.
need to see this.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's going to be the intriguing part because again, um, because right now I do feel like even though that's not my pick, I do feel like Denver should go into this season if you don't consider them the favorites to win it all, at least the favorites in the West because they already were the best team in the West, and now the question is, they have the belt. Who's going to take them out? So I think somebody can take them out, but they may not. It just again, it all depend. It all comes down to again, kind of like what you said. Did these other teams do enough to take out Denver? You're looking at it from the perspective of stopping Jokic. I don't necessarily feel that way. But again, did these teams do enough to be able to advance past them? Because again, that's kind of the elephant in the room. Did a team like Golden State, did a team like LA, did a team like Phoenix? Because I feel like those four teams in the West, those are probably your four best shots in the West at winning it all. I feel like we probably feel like in that regard, those are probably the four best. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you can order them in any way you want, but those are probably the four most likely. And the ones below that, I feel like just probably don't have a great chance unless they get really lucky in terms of some crazy trade that we don't see coming. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that
So,
100%.
but it seems like we're both kind of like, the Celtics might be a little better than the Bucks.
I
You know?
think on paper they're better.
Right.
But in performance wise, I need to see the duo go off
Exactly.
because I feel like the duo of Giannis and Damian Lillard is probably more likely to explode
Right.
than some of the guys on Boston. But Boston as a whole, I think, is just so much better. They've got the offense and defense. Milwaukee just has the offense at this point.
Right. And again, we could go into the playoffs and then, we have different predictions and then all of a sudden it's like a
A flip
Miami
flop.
Heat, yeah, Miami Heat Phoenix Suns finals or something
Yeah.
wild like that. So, and that's kind of the tough part of, early in the season because like you said, we got to see it. Because these are kind of our thoughts, like you said, based off of on paper. Even preseason, I'm not even taking a whole lot of stock
No,
into. 'Cause just like,
I'm just looking at
so
their
many,
numbers. I
yeah, because
like
when
yeah.
yeah, like so many of these games, key guys aren't playing. Like in that Lakers Suns game, like I saw Cam Reddish running point guard in the second half. Like,
Yeah.
you know, or Christian Wood and Jackson Hayes pick and rolls, right? The greatest pick and roll duo since Stockton and Malone.
Yeah,
So I
like come
mean,
on,
like,
man. It's a
yeah, like
joke.
that,
Preseason's a joke in terms of, who's out there and who's playing sometimes, but I think it's
right?
good to get a look at the numbers. I think that's the key in the young guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So now, so like I said, those are our predictions for our awards and our matchups going into this season. So let us know in the comments what you think. All right. So now, to kind of before we get into the news and rumors, we'll just do kind of like a quick round table of sorts of the over unders. In terms of what we think, for the wins and losses. Again, just like quick, little thoughts about it. Right. We're not going to go into like 10-minute discussions about each team because we kind of did a lot of that going for our off-season discussions of all these teams. Um, but we'll start in the Eastern Conference, and we'll start with Denver right there at 52 and a half. What are
You
you
said
thinking? Over or
Eastern?
under? West.
Okay,
We're at
West.
Denver.
Okay.
52 and a half for Denver. Over or under?
Mm, Want to say over, but I'm gonna have to go under.
It's gonna go. Yeah, like that's tough. I feel like I'm gonna go over, because they could just get to 53, and it's like I feel like as long as Jokic plays like 65 games or
Hmm.
something like that, which he probably will, they'll probably get that.
Yeah,
So I'll go with over.
yeah, I'm gonna go with under.
Um, yeah, I mean it's possible. Phoenix 52 and a half, same as Denver. What do you think? Over under? I'm
Under.
going under.
Yeah, under.
Yeah, because I don't know if all their guys are gonna play.
Yeah, it's health. It's health based.
Yeah. Yeah. Golden State, 47 and a half, over under.
Hmm. That's a tough one. Depending on Clay, depending on Clay, under.
You-
I'll just go under,
You've just been dogging Clay this whole
bro,
time.
because he's been playing so bad. And then
So you
I
said
don't know. I feel like Jordan Poole would have been better on the Warriors. Just saying, but
you said under?
mm,
Okay. I don't know. This one is so tough because
I
it's
know.
like they've looked good so far in preseason, but at the same time, again, how many of their guys are going to play all these games? Do I expect Chris Paul and Steph to play 65 games together? It's
No.
like probably not.
Mm-mm.
But if they actually do, they could go over. But yeah, I feel like I'm gonna go under on that one, but I don't feel good about it.
Yeah.
Lakers 46 and a half. What do you think? Over
Over.
under?
Over.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over. Of
Yeah.
course, could be worse. It could be lower, if the guys don't play.
I'm
But
putting
I
you
feel like
guys
they
at either the
probably have,
2 or the 3 seed.
yeah, because I think they can survive a scenario where like one of those guys, particularly like if LeBron has to miss like a few weeks, I
Hmm.
think they have more guys where like they could probably cover for it. So I'll
Yeah.
probably go over for that one. Memphis 45 and a half.
Hmm. Jeez. I feel it under, because we haven't even gotten to the rumors, but under.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under. Just
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't feel great about that.
The jaw thing, and then the other stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
under.
I'm gonna go under on that one. Clippers 45 and a half. I'm just gonna say right now under.
I'm gonna go over.
Okay, so you think that they're gonna play, more games than they have before?
Yep.
I
I
guess
think
that's fair, 'cause
I
again,
think
if you've had
Kawhi and
4
PG will be good this year. Yeah.
yeah, like I guess that's fair if it's like you've had 4 straight rough years, but now like you have like one, final year where like yeah, they're finally
Hmm.
healthy. Potentially see that, but
Yeah.
I don't know, I just don't trust it. Minnesota 44 and a half.
Hmm. I want to be like under.
I know. I want to pick the
I'm gonna
under
go
so bad.
under. I'm gonna go under.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
trust
like
it.
I can't pick under though because I have Edwards for most improved.
You're
That's the
right.
thing that sucks. Because
Yeah.
like, but at the same time, I feel like there's a world where like they could win 45 games, which is one more win, but they could still look bad. But
Right.
Edwards could
Right.
still look good.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like with that one, I mean, it's like what 3 more wins.
Hmm.
So I mean, gosh, I hate this one.
I know.
Uh man, I'll go over just
Okay.
because I'm gonna expect Towns to play more, and I'm gonna expect Edwards to be better. But
Can't be mad
again,
at it.
yeah, Oklahoma City, 44 and a half.
Mm. I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go over as well, but like 45, where it's like, I think they could win one more than that number. But again, getting close to 50 wins, I think in the West is gonna be really hard.
Yeah.
But I think again for the regular season, I think they could win a lot of regular season games because they have so much young talent.
I agree.
That young talent is good. So New Orleans 44 and a half.
I want to say over, because we already know what this team looks like if Zion is healthy, but odds are he's not going to be healthy, so under.
Yeah,
Because I
that's
think they won 42 games, lost 40 last year, so
I think so. I think so, yeah. I think they were 40 and 42.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm gonna go under as well. I mean,
you
because I
have
feel
to.
like they're trying to play more than last year, but still not enough to where they're gonna win 44 games.
Right.
But at the same time, hey, this could be it. This could be the year.
Yeah. I'll go over. I'll give them credit.
Okay, yeah, I'll go over because again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of I'm not thinking about playoffs. I'm thinking about regular
Right.
season, and I think they could win a lot of regular season
Yeah.
games. It's going to be a tough ask because again, their guys were very healthy last year. Um, but again, it is a young team, so they could just be healthy again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and again, they have enough offense where even if like Sabonis has to miss time or something like that, or one of those guys, they could probably still get enough offense to get over the top in the regular season. So
Right.
I'm gonna go for that one. Dallas, 43.5.
Under.
Under?
Yeah, because what they won 38 last year.
Yeah.
Mm. But I feel like they'll be better though.
Yeah, I mean, again, remember at the end of the season they did tank.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
on the other hand, did they do enough to make you feel like they could win,
And
5, 6 more games? I mean, again, like
I'll
they
go
haven't.
over. I'll go over. I'll give it to
Yeah,
them.
I guess I'll go over because again, if Luka's healthy, because again, it seems like he might start the year off injured.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's a factor. But I feel like with Kyrie, they may be able to have enough to like just win some regular season games. Maybe not all of them, but again, I think they may have enough pieces on offense to be able to win it out. But can they get stops? That's the question.
Right.
Um, so I'll go over too. Utah 35.5. Right, so this is where the wins start to drop off.
35. I'll go over.
5.5.
I'll go
35.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can go over with that one. They were pretty good to start the year last year. I know they had some like weird, luck variants kind of going in there, but also last year, remember they kind of in the second half of the year kind of threw it away
Yeah.
where they were just like sitting guys. Um, again, the guard scenario is kind of strange to me, but at the same time with Markkinen, he's kind of a proven guy. We'll see what Collins does in Utah. So I think they could win more than 35. I'm not saying like they're gonna be, like a 50-win team or anything,
Right.
but I
Right.
think they can actually win more because I feel like you could win 36 games and still be like, in that non-play-in tier. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So, and then Houston is at 31.5. Over or under?
I can see them going over.
You think so?
Yeah. I could see them winning like 32, but I could also
Yeah,
see them winning like 30 flat.
yeah, exactly. That's
So
the rough part.
yeah.
Like, I just feel like there's so much talent in the Western Conference. I feel like it's going to be really hard for them to get there. But then it also just seems like 31, 32 wins is so low.
I know.
Um,
That's
but at
why
the same,
I've got to give it to them
but yeah, but at the same time, last year they were so awful. And I feel like they made at least some level of improvement.
a lot.
Um, yeah, so I feel like I'll go over, but like you said, but it's like over where it's like one more win,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like 32. That's probably it.
Yeah.
San Antonio, 28.5.
God dang. Um,
Yeah.
I'll go under because they'll probably just win 28 games.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under it because I
Yeah.
think that's what they want.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You're not wrong.
they don't. Yeah, they don't want to be. They don't want to be a playoff team and then end up with like the 15th
That would
pick or
be
something like
horrible.
that. Like they want to be a bottom 5 team.
Yeah.
And then Portland 27.5.
Over.
You think over?
Yeah. I
I
think
think
Scoot, Shaden Sharp, and Simons. I feel like that trio can just win more than. What did you say?
27.5. So they would
They
basically.
can win more than that. But
Yeah,
that's just
the
me.
only the only thing that would like prevent me from going over is I just feel like there's gonna be like a scenario where they end up trading some of those other guys, like like a Malcolm Brogdon or like even like a Robert Williams potentially I could see like getting moved for
Okay.
something, somewhere. Um, but at least but so I feel like in the early part of the season they might like win some games and surprise some people. and then they'll be like, oh shoot, we're winning too many games. We gotta, kind of move some of these guys, and then that's when like they'll go from like they'll be at like I don't know 21 wins, and then like the rest of the way they'll go like 5-30 or something
Right.
like that. I mean, so
Yeah.
that so I'm probably gonna go under, even though I do think it will be a very entertaining team. Like it
Yeah.
could be like one of the best 20 something win teams you'll ever see.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, Boston going to the East, 54.5. This is two more wins than Denver. Uh, over or under?
Over.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, again, I think just for the fact that their poor guys don't really miss a lot of games. So like as long as Tatum's played like 70 something games like every year. So unless knock on wood he has a weird injury, like as long as he's out there, they'll have a good shot at winning a lot
Yeah.
of those games. And they're in the East,
Yeah.
so they'll be able to kind of stack up some wins there too. So yeah, I'd probably say over for that. Milwaukee 53.5.
And the other one was what?
So Boston was 54.5. Milwaukee was 53 and a
I'm
half.
gonna go under.
Okay. I'm gonna go under
Defense.
as well.
Defense.
Yeah, yeah, defense, and I think I got some more injury concerns with their main
Yeah.
guys. I think that combination. But at the same time, like they could, even if they're like a 3 or 4 seed, I could still be like, as long as they're healthy at the same time, they could still compete.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just factoring in regular season. Cleveland 50.5.
Over.
So I think they were 51-31 last year.
I'm gonna go over.
Over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna go over. But it's gonna be, a little bit tough. I think Jared Allen's gonna miss the first part of the season. Um, but if Mobley takes a step forward, then they can probably make up for some of that. Garland and Mitchell, right? They should be able to handle the offensive scoring. They have some
Mm-hmm.
more Max Strus and Georges Niang. So I think they could probably win a few more games. Probably not much more because again, like
Yeah.
more than like 5 games, you're getting close to like 60 wins, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I don't think they're
I'm
gonna do
thinking
that,
like
but
51, 52.
like around the same as last year, maybe
Mm-hmm.
like one extra win.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, 47.5.
Under.
This one I think is one of the most intriguing over unders of the whole set.
Yeah. Under.
Because I feel like for me, like I said, what I've talked about with Philly is I just feel like there's just no way that I'm gonna believe in them as
You
long as
can't.
Harden is on the team with the stuff going on. If they get back like a real star, with to pair with Embiid, then I could see the over. But right now, as currently constructed, right, like I'm just kind of gonna go under. But at the same time, it's like feel like the number is gonna be really close because I just feel like with Embiid, as long as he's healthy, like they're probably still gonna win like a bunch of games, with or without Harden.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just feel like with that situation going on, I don't think they'll be as good in the regular season this year.
Yeah. I'm gonna go under though. For
Yeah,
sure.
so that's what I would say too. New York, 45.5.
Over.
Yeah, I'd go over. The team's basically the same as last year with DiVincenzo. It was a solid team. Brunson's really good. Randall hopefully comes back healthy. So I feel like they could probably win a couple more games than that. So
Yeah.
Miami, 44.5. This is another one that I think is a really intriguing one. I think they were basically at 44-38 last year, or
Mm-hmm.
44-38, I
Yep.
think. So basically same record as last year. So do you think they're going to be over or under?
I'm gonna go over. I know it's kind of weird, but I think there's a couple
is.
teams that are gonna fall.
Yeah, I feel like as much as we've kind of dogged Miami for the trade stuff, I feel like as the dust has settled, I don't feel quite as horrible about them, even though I don't feel great about it. But I think, again, I think they'll find some ways to, win over some of these games. In fairness to Strus and Vincent, right, they weren't as great in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can find some guys to kind of just, again, help them win regular season games, maybe Hero gets a little bit better. Maybe the Jaquez kid, right, maybe he ends up, kind of helping them out in some of these games, or Jovic, somebody. I feel like they could probably find a way to get to, that amount. So I feel like I
Exactly.
can go over as well.
Yeah.
Probably not by much, but I
No.
think
No.
they could potentially get there. And like you said, some of the other teams will fall for sure.
Yep.
Atlanta, 41.5.
It's pretty much right where they were last season.
Yeah, they were 41.
I'm gonna go over by like 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think I'll go over. I
Yeah.
like the Quinn Snyder addition.
Yep.
I think with Collins, even though I do like him, I feel like it is kind of like addition by subtraction, where I think the roster fit makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
There's more motion, there's more movement, not necessarily because of Collins, but because of Quinn Snyder's offense.
Mm-hmm.
If Trey Young is playing off the ball more, which it seems like he has, I think they're going to win more games. I do still like Trey Young a lot, even though I know he's taken a lot of flack, the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go over for that one. Okay, I am frozen.
Are you?
Okay, or like you're frozen. You're just like you have like this smirk on your face. Yeah, you don't. Okay, now you don't.
Wait,
Couldn't get
what?
it. Yeah, it was like your picture was stuck for like about 20 seconds. Because I think I got a Discord message or something.
Oh,
Um,
all
so
right.
now we're back to normal. All right, so
Cool.
yeah, so Indiana, they are at 38 and a half.
Under.
You're gonna go under.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's your reasoning for that?
I know. I do like what they've done. They do have some good guys. I think Halliburton's going to be great. But I know that the East is weak. But at the same time, I don't think this is a team where we can confidently say they're going to win a lot of games. I feel like uh, they're just going to be playing a bunch of teams where I think they're liable to lose games, and it's not really necessarily their fault. So
Right.
I
Yeah,
feel like it's a talented roster. I just think they're a little bit too young for that.
yeah, I get that. I feel like I'm gonna go over, but not by a lot.
Okay.
With Halliburton, he played in 56 games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna assume he's gonna play more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they have a little bit more incentive to be a little bit more competitive. But at the same time, like you said, they're not gonna go crazy and win like 45 games or so.
Right.
But I think they'll be better than last year. They were 35 and 47. And I think if Halliburton plays like 60 plus games, right, they'll be like more than 3 wins better than
Yeah.
last year. But like you said, you know, some of these wins may be hard to come by. But I feel like like you said, with some of the other teams falling, I could see them going over, but probably not by like a crazy amount.
Right.
Um, Chicago, 37 and a half. This is a team that, we've not been very kind to in terms
Yeah.
of what we think of them. But I'm just gonna go right now and speak before you. I'm gonna go under on that one.
Yeah. I'm gonna go significantly under as well.
Yeah.
I just don't
Um.
think anything's there. Really.
Yeah. Brooklyn, 37 and a half, same as Chicago. Are you gonna go over
Over.
or under?
Over.
You're gonna go over.
Over. I like what I saw in preseason. I know we just said take preseason with a grain of salt, but there's some things that I really like. I think Ben Simmons is on his way back. Bridges, I think, will be great. So those two things coupled together, I think, is a recipe for success more than Indiana and more than Chicago, I think.
I think for Brooklyn, I think they have the incentive to try to win games. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'll probably go over for that one as well. But again, probably by like a couple wins. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Because
you're right.
they're definitely going to be worse than last season. Because as we mentioned many times over, right? A lot of the wins from last season were courtesy of you know Durant and Kyrie Irving.
I agree.
They were 45 and 37 last year. So I feel like they'll definitely be worse than last year. Um, but at the same time, like I feel like that's one where it's gonna be really close. So I think I'll go over by like a game
Okay.
because I feel like they're gonna be not very good, but like they're not gonna be, I don't think, the worst team in the East. But again, a lot of it hinges on some of it hinges on Simmons because if he's like he was in some of the earlier preseason games, right, they'll be a little bit better. But if he's like some of the other preseason games where he wasn't as good, then they'll be they'll be worse.
Yeah, you're right.
Orlando, 37 and a half.
Over.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over for that one as well. I think we both like what we've seen from a lot of their young guys. I think at least a couple of those guys are gonna take another step forward. Um, Mainly, I think their two best players, right, Wagner and Boncaro.
Mm-hmm.
I think those guys will be better. I think Fultz in a contract year, right? We'll see what he does, but you'd imagine in a contract year he's gonna play really well. Again, they got a weird situation with a ton of guards, so they kind of probably need to figure out a way to kind of trim that down. But either way, I like a lot of their young players, so I think they could probably win a few more than that one. Again, by a
Exactly.
ton, probably not, but I
Right.
think they can beat it.
Yeah, they'll be nice.
then Toronto 36.5.
Might go over on that one.
Yeah, that one is interesting because I feel like I don't think they're going to be that great, but I do like some of the talent on the roster,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Scotty Barnes has looked pretty good this preseason. I think
Very
he hurt
good.
his foot, but
But
I
they
think
said
he's
it's nothing to
supposed to
worry
be.
about.
But yeah, they said he should be fine.
Yeah.
For the start of the season. So assuming that that doesn't get in the way of anything, because foot injuries can be kind of weird, but assuming that doesn't get in the way of anything, if he has a bounce back year, and gets closer to what he was like his rookie year, but better, then I think they can reach that over.
Yeah.
Because you still have Siakam. You still have other guys, OG Anunoby, right? You got Dennis Schroeder in the backcourt. So I think they could definitely win a few more games than that.
Yeah.
But again, now we're starting to get towards, the bottom of the barrel in the Eastern Conference, right? Now we're in, interesting territory. Charlotte at 31.5.
Under.
You're going to go under?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is interesting because we were kind of, people that were saying like we kind of like, some of the talent in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So what kind of, but you still feel like they're still probably going to suck.
Yeah, and it's not even their fault. I just think there's teams that are better than them, you know? And I feel like they've got to figure out some situations, especially with Hayward. Then Bridges, I don't know what's going on. Like it just seems like there's just a mess. It's just like a cluster mess. Um, but they
Yeah,
just can't
if it
seem to
wasn't
figure it out.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna go over, but at the same time, I don't feel great about it. For me, I kind of also need to know about the Bridges situation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is this a scenario where he's gonna, continue to be out for most of the season, or is he gonna eventually come back and play? Right? Because
Right.
if he comes back and plays, then that makes them better, and they can probably get to that number. But without him, it's probably going to be, a little bit more of a struggle. Although they do have some other forwards, to kind of ease the pain a little bit, right? Because now you have Brandon Miller,
Mm-hmm.
um, and Hayward and those guys, and PJ Washington, right? So you could probably have those guys, take up the forward minutes for Bridges while he's out. Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna go over on that one, but I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, that's my point. I was like, I can't do over. I like them, but
De-
I can't do over.
Detroit 27.5.
Hmm. It's about 10 more games. I'll go
Yeah,
over.
because I'm pretty sure they were the worst team in the league last season.
Yeah.
They were 17-65. So
I think they'll be
you're
better
gonna
than
go over.
Charlotte. So yeah, over.
I think, yeah, I'm gonna go over as well. Again, the 17 wins, right? Obviously we know with Cade Cunningham didn't really play a whole lot of games last year. He only played in I think 12 games. If he plays anywhere close to like, half the season, right? Or like if he gets to like 50 something games or closer to 60, right? Then yeah, they could win, 10 more games, right? If he plays like 15 to 20 more games than last year, that should probably make up for the 10 wins right there. So I would go over as well. And they also added some other guys like Asor, who we've liked a lot so far. Um, you know, got some shooters, got more shooting with Joe Harris.
Yeah.
I believe Bojan Bogdanovic is going to miss the season opener. I don't know if it's a serious injury that will keep him out for a while, but still,
Hmm.
I think they can. I think they can go over that, but
Yeah.
again, probably not by a whole lot because
Right.
I just like you said, even though I feel like they'll be better, how much better than the other teams?
Yeah.
And then Washington with the lowest over under at 23.5 games.
Over.
So last season,
Over.
last
Over.
season,
Over. Over. Over.
last season they were 35-47. Of course, that was with a different group of guys. Although many of those guys, didn't always play.
Yeah.
Bradley Beal, right? He played in 50 games. Kuzma played in 64. Porzingis played in 65. So your best player missed 30 games. But now a completely different roster, rebuilt, younger. Um, you know, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like, am I crazy with you? Where it's like I might go a little bit over as well. I
You
mean,
should. I'm telling you, we're gonna be running a different pace of basketball. It's gonna be faster, and I think speed wins games nowadays. So just watch out. I'm not saying we're gonna be a play-in or a playoff team, but we're gonna be better than what all these bozos are predicting us as.
I think there's. I mean, again, I think they could win a few more than 23 games or 24
We're
games, just
winning
because
30 tops, bro.
again, you got to factor in right with Poole, right? He's overall been pretty durable. I think he played in every game last season.
Hmm.
Um, you'd assume age-wise he might get better, or he should get better. Now he's got more, freedom of reign, freedom to work with.
Mm-hmm.
He can play on or off the ball. You still got Kuzma, right? You got some guys like Bilal Koulibaly, Denny Avdia, right? You got some long, rangy defenders. Um,
Tyus too.
yeah, shooting wise, we'll see. Not all those guys are like high percentage shooters,
No.
but they do have some guys that can get hot. Um, so we'll see. But at the same time, I feel like they could probably win like a few more. Like I don't think they're gonna be great, but you know, I think they'll win a few more. Because again, like those guys will try to compete to win games. Like they have some guys that are capable of winning some basketball games here and there, and they were part of some championship teams. So
Exactly. I think the young guys on the team, they're not used to losing, and I don't think they want to be used to losing. So,
the
I
only
don't think they're in the recipe for disaster category. I think it's
yeah,
going
and
to be
then
a
the
30
and
win team.
the other factor is, they do have some guys that they could potentially move at the deadline. And again, depending on the level of, impact that those guys are, right? Like say Gallinari, right? How much is he going to play? Maybe you move like a Tyus Jones or somebody like that, or one of the other guys on the roster. So, and obviously, I think there's one guy that is going to be taken off that potential trade list, which we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, I feel like I'm going to go over on that one, but that's kind of like one of my shots in the dark. I think they can win more than that. I'm not saying
Yeah.
they're going to be, but I think they can be a little better than, you know, 20 wins.
Yeah. That means a lot. You're one of the few that actually thinks we're going to be good.
Yeah, so now that we've wrapped up our over unders, now we're gonna close it out with the news and rumors going around the league. So we've kind of hinted at it a little bit, but now we're gonna mention it. So Steven Adams, as of today, we're recording on Sunday. It's reported from Woj Shams he's gonna be out for the year. So that injury that he had last season, he was rehabilitating it. And apparently it hadn't gone well, so he needed surgery. So he's gonna be out for this whole season. I think that's a big blow to Memphis.
Yeah.
And that was kind of one of the factors that kind of went into our over under for Memphis, just because again you're already going to be without Ja for 25 games. Steven Adams, who we thought was going to be able to play and be healthy, right? He's obviously not going to play. Brandon Clark is already out as well, right? So you're without your starting center and your backup center, and you're without your best player as well.
Yeah.
You're going from Tyus Jones to Marcus Smart, who's a different type of point guard.
And then Pat Tillman's going to be starting again. So,
Xavier Tillman,
or
yeah.
yeah,
So
Xavier Tillman. So that should
yeah,
be fun.
so I think I think a pretty big blow to Memphis. That's unfortunate because again, when Adams has played, I think he's been productive for them as a rebounder, as a defender, a passer,
Yeah.
in the pick and roll. I think he just kind of changes, like the just the landscape of the team. I'm not saying he's like, the most impactful player ever, but I'm saying I think he's kind of an important part of their group because again, also it kind of covers for Jaren Jackson Jr.'s weaknesses as a rebounder, right? Because you don't have to have him go around and get a bunch of rebounds if Adams is out there.
Yeah.
Um, especially on the offensive boards, but that's a huge loss because it makes Memphis smaller. It makes them less physical. And I think when you don't have Ja, you'd like to have that physicality, to make up for the lack of explosiveness you'd have on offense. So I think that's kind of tough. I do wonder, maybe if they're going to be in the market to make some deals or something at the deadline. Maybe not, but um, yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. And I think Steven Adams is probably Ja's number one screen setter. I think he does it the best too. So,
Right.
when
Exactly.
Ja does come back, then it'll be a little difficult for them to get something going.
Right, yeah, because like I said, I think that's brutal. Again, it's never great to lose, a starter. Anyways, I mean, obviously, like not all starters are created equal, but still, he is an impactful player for them.
Right.
Um, and he's another veteran guy, right? And there's one thing to have him like on the bench with guys, but it's another thing to have that type of guy on the floor, as well, right? To kind of
Right.
like just settle everybody down. If things are kind of going crazy. Not that he's gonna like be a crazy offensive asset, but still, like just in general,
Yeah.
just having those type of guys
A
out there as
level
many
headed guy.
yeah, exactly. To support this because this is still a young team.
Very young.
I think that's the loss for sure. Um, Next up, the Spurs extended Zach Collins, according to Shams, 2 years, 35 million. Right, obviously, with Wembanyama being a power forward, right, it makes sense, to kind of find some centers to be able to play alongside him and lock them up long term. This was a guy that was drafted by Portland, right, and initially didn't pan out. Had some talent, but just could never stay healthy. But he ended up being healthy for the Spurs, right? He signed a contract that at the time a lot of people kind of mocked, and they thought it was a bad deal, but he's ended up, playing really well for them. And now he's going to be their starting center going forward to replace Jakob Poeltl. Different type of center, but still, he can space the floor. He's 7 feet. He can, move around, block some shots. Occasionally grab some rebounds, be physical, right? Which again, you know, next to Wenbanyama, that's a fine fit.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it's a little underrated at this point, but it seems like they're locking up, some younger talent pretty early. So I kind of like to see that from them.
Yeah, and again, worst case scenario, you can trade him. I mean, 2 years, 35. I guess that's 18 a year.
Yeah,
Uh, but again, like that's fine. It's not long. It's not like a super long term
right.
contract, and he's not a bad player.
Yeah,
So, um, another extension, Zeke Naji for Denver, 4 years, 54 million. Right. I'm assuming with that extension, he's going to play a lot more. I would imagine as a backup center. Behind Jokic.
right.
Uh, which again probably isn't going to play a ton, but again in the regular season, you need a guy, like an innings eater type guy, to just kind of help out. Obviously, he can do a decent amount of things. He can space the floor a little bit. Decent athlete, kind of undersized, but he's kind of been a project guy for Denver. But I'm assuming with this extension, this I would imagine that means you got some more belief in him, and he's going to be a bigger part of the rotation. Because again, it seems like we talked about with the Denver thing before, that they're kind of hinging on some of these younger guys making an impact for them. And I guess the thought process is Jokic can make guys better. So even if they're not necessarily great, they'll look better playing alongside him, and
Yeah,
that's fine. He can play with or without him, I guess, because he's 6'9" and he can do some things. So
yeah. I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. I think they need to find and continue to have stability. You don't want to be a halfway house for guys. You do want to have some guys locked up long term in terms of contracts. So can't be too mad at it.
but I mean, and again, the team won a title. They spent a lot of money, on their roster, to get it. But again, that's what you got to do, in the quest for a title. You don't want to be cheap. And again, just like Zach Collins, worst case scenario doesn't pan out. It's a tradable contract at some point down the line.
Yeah.
Um, Another extension, according to Woj, Denny Avdia for the Wizards, 4 years, 55 million. I have no issues with that one either.
Yeah.
Again, I think he's played relatively well for the Wizards. Not a great outside shooter, but I think he can do a lot of other things well, especially defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's an affordable contract, like the other ones, and a potentially tradable contract down the line. So I got no issues with that whatsoever.
Yeah, me neither. I think it's great. I really like Denny a lot. I would have preferred us been able to kept Denny and Rui, but it's, that's a time long gone. But yeah, I don't have a problem with this Denny contract at all. Like you said, I think it's movable, but also it's affordable. It's great. I know we're not going to be able to, bring in any big time free agents or anything like that, but it'll be nice to, say we get like a really good draft pick next year. We'll be able to sign that guy to a very, very big extension. So
Right.
it's always nice to see them making smart money moves.
Yeah, yeah, because now, without the Beal contract, right, the stuff, the salaries are kind of spread out a little
Right.
bit more. Even though, like Kuz and Poole are making a lot of money. After that, the rest of the guys are kind of like mid-level
Exactly.
and below. So
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
It's affordable.
Terrence Mann, is one guy that is not signing an extension. So he hasn't signed one. I think it makes sense because again, obviously with the Harden situation, looming, right? Potentially, if he gets traded, you can't trade him if he signs an extension. So
Right.
that one makes a lot of sense to me. In the reason, I think that's the primary reason why it hasn't been done yet. Because I feel like the Clippers do want Harden. I know they don't want to give up Terrence Mann, but if down the line they feel like they might have to, they will probably still do it.
Yeah.
So that's my guess, at least for this one, because
Yeah.
I think he's like extension worthy, but at the same
Me too.
time, if he goes to another team that's not the Clippers, right, and it's some other either rebuilding team or something like that, or a Philly or something, or he gets flipped and he balls out, right, then he'll get less, than he would have gotten less money if he had signed the extension. So that's another factor as well. But I think the primary reasoning is the potential trade piece.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's smart from both sides, honestly. So I think it's the right move, right decision, and hopefully the Clippers get him. But I hope they don't actually have to give up Terrence Mann. I wouldn't be as high on the move if they had to do that.
Yeah, and so finally, with our last notification, so Andre Iguodala, right? He has officially retired from the NBA, right?
Yeah,
So, 19 seasons in the NBA, right? Four-time champion, right? All those championships were with the Golden State Warriors. Um, yeah, 39. He was on the Warriors team last year, right? Obviously it didn't work out, but still, I think he had a really good career.
yeah,
Four-time champion, Finals MVP, one-time All-Star, two-time defensive All Defensive Team. Um, so I mean, yeah, I mean, do you feel like he's a Hall of Famer?
yeah. I think
I think
so.
so.
Just
I think
because
so.
he's a four-time champion, the things that he did to, contribute to a few of those championships, I think, are a little bit underrated. I know people have been dogging him recently for holding LeBron to like a 35-point triple double or whatever the stat was when he won the Finals MVP. But regardless, you know, he did a lot, and I think his career highlights speak for themselves. Um, and the guy's resume, you can't argue with it. It's not like he was a crazy superstar, but
Right.
he was a
Yeah.
great player, and I think a
I
great
do
player
think.
deserves to go to the Hall of Fame.
Yes, I think he is absolutely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
Um, you know, Even with the career numbers 11, 5, and 4, like it doesn't matter. Like he had a stretch in his career where he was like, a top, 20 guy for
yeah,
multiple seasons on end. He was a big part of multiple, like you said, multiple championship teams. And like you said, a guy like that, I think it's a no-brainer, to be in the Hall of Fame.
yeah,
So, I'll be interested to see, what the next chapter of his career is. But either way, hats off to a Hall of Fame
yeah.
career.
Congratulations.
Yeah, when he gets in, we'll be talking about it because
Oh
again,
yeah,
I
for
think he
sure.
definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. No questions asked.
Agreed, agreed, and agreed.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, let us know in the comments what you thought about our, season awards. Our potential finals predictions, our over unders. Again, let us know. Again, we've established a TikTok now, so don't forget to, follow that. Obviously, continue to follow us on Instagram and like and subscribe our YouTube videos. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you have a good Monday. And hope by the time we see you, we'll have some NBA basketball to
Yes,
talk about.
sir.